Hi friends, this is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about a next 50 years subject. And that subject is Riching Right in Phandalin. All right, okay, so let's dig into this. So first of all, I'm really fascinated by this subject of the next 50, right? So we did the first 50 years, and really, what was the first 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons about? It was really about survival. We never really got good at it. We've never really mastered it. I think we did very, very little with Dungeons and Dragons. We did not Dungeons and Dragons right in the first 50 years. Now, is that on us? Are we responsible for that? No, absolutely not. The first 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons were simply survival, okay? Twice, 1983 and 2023, two different groups completely opposed to each other came and shouted the same words: D&D be gone. They shouted it in 1983. It was American Christians, it was American religious zealots who were like, D&D be gone. There's the figure, there is the literal pyre. Throw your books on it, burn those books. We do not want Dungeons and Dragons to exist, right? 2023, atheists and agnostics came, and they said, we're upset that Hasbro has changed the OGL, so you now cannot read, own, do Dungeons and Dragons in any way. Burn your books. And they talked about D&D Beyond, and they said D&D be gone, right? And they encouraged people to literally delete their accounts where they paid for hundreds of dollars of books. It was a digital book burning. The first was a literal book burning. The second was a digital book burning. Now, the reality is they're both the same. And the reason why is I just watched Michael B. Jordan's Fahrenheit 451. And in that movie, they did both. They literally were like, let's destroy digital files. Let's destroy actual real books. And I think it's very important to understand that Dungeons and Dragons has literally had American religious zealots demand the destruction of D&D books, and there have been atheists and agnostics 40 years later who did the same thing and wanted and told people, you cannot play Dungeons and Dragons and we will burn your books, right, digitally. It's astounding. It's just absolutely astounding. So all we did in the first 50 years was survive, right? And that's not nothing, because now we have Dungeons and Dragons. But I don't believe Dungeons and Dragons is anywhere near its zenith. I think it's like, the way to understand Dungeons and Dragons today is very much like Marvel was in the 80s. It's not understood for its value. It's massively undervalued. It's in its struggle days, right? Like, I believe where we should be is Dungeons and Dragons should be bigger than any video game that exists, right? There's no reason in the world Baldur's Gate 3 should have made $1 billion and the 2024 core rule books did not. That is a broken world, and we need to fix that. Okay, all right. Thanks for your patience there. So let's go ahead and talk now about Riching Right in Phandalin. So now we're going to fix it, and we're going to do better with Dungeons and Dragons. And we need to think deeply about Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so I'm going to lay it on you. This is very important to understand, and we have not understood this, and we have not done this right for 50 years. But for the next 50, we need to do it right, okay? Riching Right in Phandalin. Okay, Phandalin. It's my favorite Dungeons and Dragons city, okay? Actually, it's a village. It's actually a village, okay? It's right at the southern tip of the Neverwinter Forest, okay? And it is very precipitously positioned between Waterdeep and between Neverwinter, okay? And your adventures will hit Phandalin. If you're in the Forgotten Realms, you will hit Phandalin, okay? If you're first level and you roll into Phandalin, if you're 5th level and you roll into Phandalin, if you're 10th level and you roll into Phandalin, if you're 15th level and you roll into Phandalin, if you're 20th level and you roll into Phandalin, you are rich, okay? You will encounter woodcutters, right? These guys and gals are going out every day and they're cutting down trees, they're sawing them, they're actually doing real labor. They're working extremely hard every single day. They're doing it in the hot sun. They're doing it in the middle of the cold winter, right? And there are wolves there that kill them. There are green dragons there that kill them, right? And all they have is an axe that they have to work hard to keep sharp every night, right? Like they are on the struggle bus. Like, this is real. The struggle is real for them. The miners, right? You will encounter woodcutters and miners in Phandalin. There aren't rich. There's one rich dude in Phandalin, and that is Harbin Wester, right? But the denizens of Phandalin, right? Those miners, man, they are busting their muscles and busting their bones, and they are grinding out their life in soot-filled mines, digging out garnet and digging out jewels, right, which are going to be swept up by merchants and by nobles and by adventurers. You carry gems, right? And that, you carry gems, right? So you're going in there and you're busting this material out, right? Now, this is very important for you to understand, okay? You are rich. You're an adventurer and you are rich. You are excessively wealthy, okay? Even at first level. You can start first level as a folk hero, right? You start first level with a background, some kind of career, some kind of profession, some kind of experience, right? You are not coming from in fact, they got rid of Urchin. The Urchin is literally no longer even in the game, right? There are no poor adventurers. At first level, you are dealing with gold pieces. You have dozens of gold pieces worth of equipment on you already, right? You may start with a companion. That companion's a trained animal, right? You are starting with signifiers of wealth, okay? Because you are wealthy, even at first level, okay? So you're an adventurer. You roll into Phandalin, right? What you need to understand is that you are rich, and the miners are poor, and the woodcutters are poor, right? And the hedge witch that you encounter, all these people are poor, and you are not, okay? And what we ignored for 50 years was, well, I'm an adventurer. I can spend my money on my magic items. I can, maybe I'll ball out and give some rich money to the tavern owner, right? Maybe the serving person who brought me my mead, right? But we have not been actually riching right, okay? Now, what is riching right? What the heck? What are you talking about, Scott? You know what I'm talking about. We in America demand that you rich right. Where do we do that? Did you just see what happened to Jeff Bezos, right? Jeff Bezos gets a divorce, then falls in love, and now he's in love, right? And so he's like, hey, I'm going to have a wedding. Goes to Venice, spends millions of dollars, right? Do people say, hey, thanks for coming to Venice. We appreciate that you're, helping us poor people to, get better gondolas, right? No, they're like, you suck. You are not riching right, right? We judge you for your ethics, right? We don't think you're running your business right, right? And why is that? Well, he doesn't give enough to philanthropy, right? They're saying that they question if his workers have been correctly paid, right? And they're saying, you owe us to rich right. You don't just get to be rich without responsibilities, right? We have never reflected this in Dungeons & Dragons. We have never, and now we're moving into the second 50. If you are a dungeon master, you are under obligation to ensure that actually, it is not your job to ensure that every adventurer riches right, okay? You simply need to communicate the expectation of the world that they rich right, okay? And the reason why is Dungeons & Dragons is a reflection of our culture, and the point of Dungeons & Dragons is to improve ourselves, right? We need to deal with these bigger questions. And this is extremely important. This is extremely important with Dungeons & Dragons players, because many of them, when they start Dungeons & Dragons, they're not rich, right? They might be middle class or upper or lower middle class, or in very, very few occasions they might be poor. It's actually pretty rare to find a poor person playing Dungeons and Dragons, only because the opening ante on Dungeons and Dragons is 1,150 pages, right? And that's not the correct formula. If you actually know how to read 1,150 pages and you're confident enough to run Dungeons and Dragons, it's highly unlikely you're going to end up poor, right? Because those kind of skills are extremely lucrative, right? Confidence, charisma, and intelligence are extremely valued in America, and they're paid for, right? But most, I would say, most Dungeons and Dragons players, especially when they start, are middle class, right? They're not rich, okay? But there's a high probability they're going to be rich, right? So you have an obligation of their dungeon master to begin this conversation and say, okay, you're an adventurer. You are rich. Are you riching right? Are you doing the appropriate things? Because your level of wealth demands specific behavior from you in the Forgotten Realms, okay? All right, now what is it? What is the behavior that is demanded? We'll discuss that in future videos. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.